Hello, my Astro friends. I'm AstroBianca, and I'm happy to be with you with a short video because I would like to talk about some astrological energies that are ahead of us, actually quite soon. And I think we need to be aware of as they may be a bit challenging or even a bit dangerous, I might dare say. I'm sure you all have heard by now that March is one of the most important months of the year because it includes some major and rare astrological shifts, plus some other things that are going on as well. Generally, spring is not going to be the easiest because during that period, another major change will take place and an important aspect as well. But what I wanted to talk more about today is the 5-day period from 17 to 17, from the 15th to the 17th of March, plus or minus 1 day. That's why it's a 5-day period, which basically is already working since it was initiated with the full moon on 6th of March and is still active. I believe that during this period, we will see some major events happening on a world level, but also in the lives of those who are directly affected by these energies. And these are mostly the 20th to the 26th degree of the mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. Let me explain what I mean. Back in September, I spoke about Jupiter at the Southern Uranus midpoint, and I pointed out that Jupiter would trigger it again, as well as the dangerous Mars-Pluto midpoint, all of January and February. And those two midpoints were activated simultaneously, which makes them even more important, as basically they work together. According to Aberdeen, when Jupiter triggers the Southern Uranus midpoint, we might see losses, damages to buildings, collapse of buildings, mechanical damages, a sudden turn of luck. Saturn and Uranus generally, not the midpoint, generally the aspects or the energies between Saturn and Uranus and the midpoint as well is an energy that definitely talks about earthquakes and strong earthquakes. And let us not forget that Uranus is in Taurus, which is an earth sign. So it's definitely related. The Mars-Pluto midpoint is a force majeure axis, which means intervention by superior force. It's kind of a faded event, let's say, and talks about injuries, deaths, violent or critical situations. And Pluto represents the masses, a lot of people. Jupiter at the midpoint expands all of these. And unfortunately, the inconceivable number of deaths, especially because of the collapse of a large number of buildings, as a direct result of the very strong earthquake in Turkey on 6th of February, unfortunately, is quite representative of how the simultaneous activation of the two midpoints by Jupiter worked out. The two midpoints were active all of January and February, and we saw that more earthquakes followed and more buildings collapsed. So March 2023 and spring in general is a very important period of the year as 4 planets will change signs. Saturn move to Pisces, Pluto will move into Aquarius for a short period of time. Mars will move in Cancer, and Jupiter will cross into Taurus. As soon as Jupiter moves into Taurus, right away it will square Pluto. Both will be in their new positions. And Jupiter will be conjunct the North Node as well. This is the first square in the Jupiter-Pluto synodic cycle that began on 5th of April 2020, and I expect that it will bring significant changes related to that period or something that might have been set in motion during that time period. Jupiter square Pluto is a very harsh energy. It talks about corruption, dictatorships, power control issues, and money as well, or wealth, if you wish, changing hands because it's the square and Jupiter is also related to wealth. The involvement of the nodes makes it even more important, karmic and faded. But let us go to what is happening at the moment And why is this 5-day period, 15th to 17th of March, plus minus 1 day, important? Why do we need to be aware of it? We're in the middle of the moon cycle that began on 20th of February with the new moon happening at 1 degree 21 minutes of Pisces. And here I would like to make a short parenthesis to say that the new moon was impacting Greece's natal chart quite negatively. And I'm sure most of you or many of you heard about the terrible train crash on 28th of February, or close to 1st of March, because it was late at evening, 11 o'clock in the evening. And this was the week after the new moon, which is a point that triggers the new moon cycle and the chart, because it's the first square. So that horrible accident resulted to over 60 people getting killed, most of them young students who were returning to their university. And because there was a long holiday weekend, so they went to a different city to spend the holiday weekend, and they were going back to the university. But also a lot of people were missing, or others got seriously injured. So, and the psychological impact, definitely, it's much more wide. Saturn was at 28 and 10 minutes of Aquarius, and its ingression into Pisces happened on the same day of the full moon. Therefore, Saturn is playing a major role in the current moon cycle as well. The full moon on 6 March at 16:40 minutes Virgo is the mid of the moon cycle, and everything that has started with the new moon comes to a head during that time to clear up and move forward, or take its final, moving toward its final outcome. And it took place just a few minutes before Saturn changed signs and moved into Aquarius for the first time since 1993. It was in Aquarius for a short period in 1993, and then moved permanently from January 1994 to 1996. Here, let me again point out that those who were born during those years will experience their first Saturn return sometime over the next 3 years, which is an important milestone in everyone's life. But I will not expand on this today. Let us continue with the topic of our video today. Let me focus on the crucial 5-day period, which is right around the corner, because in my opinion, the challenge and the challenging astrological energies that will be active simultaneously again and will be forming a T-square with the triple conjunction of Mercury, Sun, Neptune on the apex requires great attention, both on a personal level, if the natal chart is impacted, those who have planets or important points between 20 and 26 degrees of the mutable signs, as I have already mentioned, but also we can expect significant events on a world level. The 5-day period I'm talking about basically coincides with the 3rd quarter moon phase, but has been working or has been active since the full moon and will now be triggered, or certain aspects will perfect, most likely bringing events. The full moon, which was in a T-square configuration with Mars, which is now direct in the sign of Gemini and goes over the same degrees that had been crossing in October and November. And this connects issues that came up during those time periods and might be related, bringing them to a head or finalizing them. The first major aspect is the Mars-Neptune square that will take place on 14th or 15th of March, depending on where you are in the world. And it will happen at 25 and 4 minutes of Gemini. The 25th degree of the mutable signs has been affected quite a lot by the lengthy transit of Mars in the sign of Gemini, since this was the degree stationed retrograde on 30th of October. The exact degree was 25 and 36 minutes of Gemini. So this is like a sensitive degree or a sensitive point in everyone's charts. And whenever it is triggered or activated, what does Gemini represent in your chart? Where Gemini falls, and every time this degree is triggered, something impacts the area of life represented by that house in your own personal chart. Mars crossed the 20th to the 26th degrees of Gemini, 25.36, all of October in direct motion, and all of November in retrograde motion. The activation of these degrees by Mars and by the combination of the aspects brings back or is related to events that happened during that time period. The 25 degree of Gemini was impacted quite a lot from 14th of October to 14th of November. And if you recall, the final two eclipses of the year happened during that time period as well. Partial solar eclipse on 25th of October at 2 degrees and 7 minutes of Scorpio, and the total lunar eclipse at 15.59 Taurus on 8 November. And transit Uranus is currently at 16 Taurus. So it impacts the eclipse chart directly. It happened at 15 and 59 minutes. And Uranus is at 16. So they're basically conjunct very, very tightly. In the charts of both eclipses, Mars was in a tight square to Neptune. Since now, it's the third time that they will perfect their square to each other. The other two times were on 12th of October and 19th of November, 2022. And the dates fall within the period we have mentioned. So this third square is related to events or situations that took place during those times. Apart from this, which basically connect the then with the now, this aspect, especially these days, is very important because of the tight participation of other planets in the configuration. Let me share the chart of the Mars-Neptune square so that you can see things more clearly. And I'm gonna use Greenwich time. I hope you can see the chart. Let's proceed. So, as we see, the Sun and Mercury will conjunct Neptune and square Mars, which means that the negative energy of the Mars-Neptune square will be activated over and over again the next days. It is also important that 4 personal planets participate. The Moon will be in Sag on 15th of March, opposing Mars and squaring the 3 planets in Pisces. The fact that the Sun does not have great strength in Pisces and Mercury is at its worst position in the zodiac, because it's both in fall and detriment, and it is combusted by the Sun as well, could indicate that a lot is going on behind the scenes. Behind our backs, we cannot see clearly. We're blinded by the Sun as well, so we might not be aware of certain things that are going on. And whenever or wherever Neptune participates in an aspect, especially in square or opposition, square opposition to the personal planets, most importantly, which affects us on a personal level, there is always a risk of deceit. And there is a risk also of wrong decisions because thinking is subjective. We are very irrational, very emotional. We don't see things clearly, so there is no objectivity. Judgment and critical thinking do not work, as because Mercury is in fall and in Venture and Pisces. So it's more about the imagination and the intuition and the emotions rather than anything else. So it's very easy to make the wrong decisions or make irrational decisions. In general, the scene is foggy, logic does not work, and emotions are especially strong. Therefore, the thinking process and decisions are quick and careless. Mars in Gemini can also speed up the decision-making process because it's a fast planet, but we tend to not think things through. It's kind of acting without thinking. So yeah, we can be very irrational, and our decisions can be made mostly depending on emotions rather than logic or rationality. In general, there's a lot of subjectivity. Therefore, I judge this combination as challenging and possibly dangerous, as it could transpire with many different events, ranging from terrorist attacks, fires, accidents at sea, explosions, losses or damages from flooding, or other extreme natural phenomena, extreme weather conditions, accidents involving migrants or refugees, explosions, I think I've already mentioned that, fumes, emissions, gas leaks. Another possibility is a large-scale cyber attack or an important robbery, even of museum or a gallery, or anything related to Mercury or Pisces, or even some heirlooms, things like that, phone tappings, surveillance, espionage. We might learn of some revelations, or some more scandals might break out. Anything related to corruption, very strong energies there. It's also possible that a great scam will take place, or some type of corruption, but we will not know about it until later in time. Or it could be the other way around, that we might learn some more details or revelations about some scandals that have already came up, or some new ones. We can see problems with water, deaths because of drug overdose, drownings, increased number of suicides. We might hear more about that during those days. Mars is an important planet when it comes to depression, because it's our energy, it's our what motivates us to act, to go after what we want. So when we don't feel well, we don't have the energy or the motivation to do much. So yeah, Mars plays a lot of role in depression. And in square with Neptune, we might be more sad, we might be feeling lonely, more depressed. So yeah, and in the square, I mean, when there is an aspect with Neptune, even the positive aspects, we might still be feeling this. But when we have a square, and Neptune is much more, it's a lot stronger, it's in rulership in Pisces. So statistically speaking, with those aspects, with that aspect, we might see people having more desire, or already people who already were already suffering from depression or melancholy or loneliness, just feeling that they want to escape or to leave. Unfortunately, this is one of the possibilities. So we need to be careful with the level, with the amount of alcohol we drink during that day, because it can also bring increased desire to consume alcohol, drugs, or substances, among other things. And if there is a problem with those issues already, then this is a dangerous energy. In addition, because Mars is in Aries duad and Neptune is in a Capricorn duad, this combination could connect military operations, attacks against governments or leaders, or even businesses, coups, violent breakups, of demonstrations, even with the use of tear gas or chemicals. Neptune, the brutal violence or suppression of demonstrations comes from Capricorn. Other possibilities could be something related to the Navy or warships, military clashes, ambushes, sabotages, I would like to mention, and please keep this at the back of your mind, that on 29th of December, 9 months from now, Mars will again square Neptune from Sag. The square will happen very near the degree of the current square. So that time period also connects to events that will take place now. In our chart, we can see that the moon will be at 22 Sag and will perfect the T-square a few hours later. Exactly 24 hours later, the sun will conjunct Neptune. On 16th of March, again, the date depends on your location in the world, we have three aspects. Mercury will conjunct Neptune. The sun is still conjunct Neptune, separating but still partile, which means that they're still on the same degree and quite close. And at the same time, squares Mars, applying aspect. At the same time, Venus squares Pluto on a critical degree. Both planets are at 29:52 minutes and very close to changing signs, just 8 minutes away. And the 29th degree is always a critical degree because it's the end of the sign and it's a testing degree. It's a testing point. The energy is preparing to change. So Venus is in detriment in Aries and is at the Pisces duad. And Pluto is not in a good position either in Capricorn and is at the Sag duad. So both have Jupiter influence. And Jupiter can talk about money and wealth. So Venus squaring Pluto is always an aspect of great sadness that concerns a large number of people, the masses. It doesn't have to affect us directly. It can affect us through others as well. If something happens to someone we feel close to, we will be sad as well, you know. So the moon participates from Capricorn. It's in an applying conjunction to Pluto that will be exact the following day. And in mundane astrology, the moon also represents the people. So one possibility, it talks about great financial losses, Venus, Pluto, because of a natural phenomenon, e.g. floods, tsunami, because of an earthquake, typhoons, volcano eruption, extreme bad weather condition, extreme raining. And the three aspects become exact within 3 hours of each other. Therefore, the energy is extremely powerful. They are working, they are coming together very near each other. So everything works at the same time. And just a few hours later, Mercury will also perfect its square to Mars. And this is an energy which also speaks about challenges or problems due to hasty, rushed, or irrational decisions. Mercury in Pisces is extremely sensitive, and this is even more amplified by Neptune. So we're extremely emotional, and Venus square Pluto also intensifies the feelings, also suspicion, pushes things to the edges. It's either black or white. So a power control as well. And when we're emotional, as we know, we're not rational. We make irrational decisions. And the combination of the planets, the planetary energies that are at play can be dangerous, as it also, they can also bring accidents, possibly because we're not careful as we're rushing, we're not watching where we're going, we might get dizzy suddenly. Be careful of cuts or burns if using a knife or cooking. Also, if you are using any type of machinery, because Mercury rules the hands and Mars the machines. And it's not a good time to have any serious discussions or for trying to convince others of anything, as we can easily get into arguments or say things that we may later regret, but we cannot take back. And because Mars eats the knife, some words might be cutting you so deep that you cannot damage it so much that it cannot be corrected. And I'm not talking literally, I'm talking figuratively. So we could be also hearing lots of lies, or we might be the ones telling lies, or we might be hearing of some revelations of a scandal. It's a gossip energy after all. Mercury in Pisces with the Neptune. and it's usually the malicious type of gossip square to Mars. Generally, be careful of possible deceit. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Not everything that shines is gold. So, on a personal level, be extremely careful during this entire period, especially if you have planets or important points between 20 and 26 degrees of the mutable signs. On a work level, it could bring accidents involving any type of transportation means, especially public transportation, trains, small planes, buses, boats, ships, and so on. And Mercury rules the news, communication, means of transportation, mobile phones, internet, social media, wires, but also the young persons, business transactions as well, signatures. So we could be hearing news about war, Mars, or sports, again, Mars, anything related to what Mars in the sign of Gemini represents. It could also be an accident related thing because involving young people, because Gemini also has to do with movement and transportation, and Mercury as well. The final aspect, the final aspect is the Mercury-Sun conjunction, which marks the mid of the Mercury-Sun synodic cycle, which started on 7th of January and runs until the 2nd of May. Mercury will be Cazimi, meaning 17 minutes from the Sun, for about 7 hours before and after. Then this is considered to be a very favorable condition for Mercury. So we might want to take advantage of that 14-hour period, which we might be able to see things in their true dimension. And let's pay attention at least what is going on during those 14 hours, 7 hours before the aspect perfects and 7 hours after. Let us now go to the astrocartography and see where the planetary lines of the Mars square Neptune and the Venus square Pluto are running. I will first share the Mars square Neptune. Before I do that, I want to show you the graphic ephemeris of the transits, because as I said, that March was the most, one of the most difficult months of the year, but also spring in general. These are the transits in the sky. And so we're looking at transit to transit for 2 years. Here is the 2023, March is here. Look at this point, just how many energies we have. It's full of energies. And this period starts from 20th of February and goes a bit for a month approximately. So we're right in the middle of this huge energy here. And there is also there is a Uranus node crossing as well, but that happened on the now I'm shocked as well because it's around the 4th, 5th, 6th of February when we had that Turkish earthquake. It's very shocking. And there is another crossing here between them, between nodes, and that's, I cannot see now what the line is, but okay, the Uranus north node happened around here. So we might have some more difficult periods, like for example here, August, and towards the end of the year, December, and here, January of next year appears to be somewhat stressful. But we will see it later. Anyway, I'll show the chart for the astrocartography for Mars Neptune. Okay, as I said, I used the Greenwich times, and the planetary lines go through Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, China, Mongolia, the eastern states of the USA, and Florida, Latin America, Ecuador, near Peru. The North Node Pluto line goes straight through Brazil. The Mars-Uranus line, it's close to, but in the sea under Brazil. Jupiter-Chiron line goes through Argentina, and I am pretty sure this line moves quite slowly. And from what I was reading the other day, Argentina is again on the verge of bankruptcy. So this Jupiter-Chiron line going through Argentina is definitely representative of that, of what is actually going on. Uranus-Saturn line goes through Canada. The Uranus line goes through Northwest USA as well. The North Node and Pluto go through New Guinea, and Uranus goes through New Guinea as well. Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad, Libya, Egypt, North Node and Pluto line cross in Somalia. Uranus-Pluto goes through Saudi Arabia, Iran. North Node and Mars go through Russia and the Ukrainian border areas, Mariupol and I don't remember, Donetsk, that area of Ukraine. Then we have the Mercury Sun Neptune square Mars, which I'm not going to show it because more or less shows the same areas as being affected, because these aspects take place just a few hours within of each other. So the map does not change that much. However, in this map, the Mercury Sun Neptune square, we see that the Venus Pluto square goes straight through Australia. In this chart that we see here now, Venus, Pluto are down here. In the next chart, they are right through the middle of Australia. The next day. And finally, the Venus-Pluto square. Again, many of the same areas are being impacted, and the Saturn-Uranus line crosses Russia. Another important thing that I would like to mention before closing is that during this period, we will also have the third moon sun square. Let me stop sharing this and go back to our chart. Great. I hope you can see our chart. You see the moon squares the sun. And this is an important point in the cycle of the moon, the one that we're going through right now. Because as I have mentioned at the beginning, this cycle started on the 20th of February. And this is the third square, which means that the moon will now be entering the phase. It's going to be like in its final week before forming the new moon. The full moon, which is the mid of the cycle, perfected on 6th of March and is directly related to the new moon, as it brings to a head situations that started with the new moon. This is something that is always the case. I'm sure you all know about that. The new moon cycle we're going through, it's connected to the full moon that took place on 6 December 2022 at 16 degrees and 1 minute of Gemini, and with the full moon on 10 September 2022, which took place at 17 degrees and 40 minutes of Virgo. A total lunar eclipse will take place very near this degree on 7th November 2025. And a partial lunar eclipse took place on this degree on the 7th of September 2006. Another eclipse that affected the same degree was a penumbral eclipse on the 5th of June of 2020, and it happened on 15 degrees and 42 of Sag. The next new moon will be on the 21st of March, and it's the day after the spring equinox at the 048 hour Aries. The new moon will happen just a few hours after the spring equinox, which makes it even more important because it's so close to the spring equinox, but also it's an important new moon because it takes place on the world axis, 0 Aries, and wherever this axis is activated, it brings important events on a world level. The fact that it takes place less than a day after the spring equinox has its own significance because the chart of the spring equinox talks to us about how the next 3 months will unfold, and the next 3 months until the summer solstice, which is usually around 21 of June. One of the things that I would expect to see would be water-related problems, for example, floods, extreme rainfall, thunderstorms, typhoons, in generally natural phenomena, because the Mars-Neptune square is quite tight in that chart, and because Neptune is also at the Sun-Moon midpoint. So a lot of other possibilities as to how this energy will unfold, but we will see. It's also an extremely important new moon cycle, as it will entail Pluto's ingress in Aquarius for the first time in 246 years, as well as it includes the conclusion of Mars's transit through Gemini, which lasted for more than 6 months. It ingressed on 20th of August, so this is quite important as well. And because Mars will move into Cancer, which is its fall position, and Cancer is related to nations, homelands, patriots, nationalists, etc. Under the current circumstances that the world is going through, this can be a bit of war energy, or in any case, domestic aggression or some protests, nationalists becoming even more nationalist and things like that. People will be wanting to defend their nation, their country, their homeland, etc. So we have reached the end, my friends, and I hope you enjoyed this video, that you found it interesting, that you have heard some new information, or at least it got place some things into perspective for you. Please be very careful, especially if your chart is impacted. And I will be back soon with another interesting video. Goodbye for today.